So what do you think, Noel? Did we finally do it? Did we finally find a movie that could satisfy your insatiable appetite for chesty women?
Oh, man. I don't want to spoil my ratings already, but if I'm being honest, I was a little disappointed of the sexuality in this thing.
The sexuality or the boobs?
Oh, there was lots and lots of boobs in this movie. And as we learned from watching the trailer for this, Russ Meyer knows how to find women with the best boobs.
That's all the whole trailer was. We watched it before we started recording. The whole thing is just hyping up Russ Meyer's ability to find hot 20th Century Fox is like running a meat factory here.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't imagine that airing on TV, right? Like hyping this guy. I have never seen a Russ Meyer's film, but I had heard of him. I knew he made kind of like skin flick kind of things, near porn. And that was kind of what I was expecting. But like you said, it was put out by 20th Century Fox. So they kind of had to rein it in a bit, I guess.
Yeah, I think this was like his shot at a major studio film. He was known as the King of the Nudies. That was his nickname because he, again, just a lot of titillation, if I can use a little pun there. I do want to stop, though, for 1 second because you called him Russ Myers a second ago. I don't want to have a rehash of the whole Dawson's Trail brewing thing. It's Dawson Trail. It's Russ Meyer.
Sorry, was that my bad, too, for Dawson's Trail?
You know what? You said it's Dawson Trail. You said Dawson's Trail. And then halfway through, I started saying it also. So it was both of
I'm
us,
sorry, Dawson Trail Brewery. That's my bad. All right.
The Dawson Trail guys were cool about that, though. They reached out on social, and they were like, happens all the time. At least you didn't say Dawson's Creek. We get that a lot also, so... We'll make it up for it here with Russ Meyer.
Russ Meyer, no plural.
No plural.
All those breasts just made me want to slur my words, I guess. I don't know.
Makes sense to me.
On everything. Yeah.
Welcome to Bad Movies and Beer, by the way. I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
Our fucking longest intro ever. And today we are discussing Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which, and they're very clear to point this out, is not a sequel to Valley of the Dolls. This is a totally different thing. Maybe it was supposed to be a sequel once, but it's not. They're very clear about that.
So were they just trying to cash in on that, but then they had to put that disclaimer at the start so they didn't get sued? Is that all that happened here?
So again, I think at one point it was supposed to be a sequel to that, but then either Russ Meyer or the guy who wrote the screenplay, and we'll reveal that in a second, were just like, I can't, let's do something different, and they kind of pivoted, but a lot of confusion because of that, unsurprisingly.
A lot of confusion is going to be something that you hear from us as we talk about this movie pretty frequently, I think.
Definitely. But before we get to all that, as always, we have paired a beer with the movie. Why don't you tell everyone what we're drinking today, Noel? What's this one?
Yeah, I'm excited for this. It's called What Feeling Good Feels Like. Now, we haven't really got into the movie yet here, but Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is all about having a good time, having some amazing freakouts in California. This is from 1970, the movie, and holy crap, does it have a lot of that 70s hippie culture.
Yeah, and on the can, with the font for What Feeling Good Feels Like, there's the unmistakable peace sign in one of the O's in the word good. So that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. But weirdly, this brewery themed something completely different, right? Totally unrelated theme.
Yeah, this brewery itself is more connected to baseball. It's called Farm League Brewing. And this is in Cambridge, Ontario, or they like to say that they're from Galt or brewed in Galt, Ontario. Really organic, like fresh ingredients, clean, crisp beers. I've had quite a bit of their stuff and really enjoyed it. I visited a couple times. You picked this up from Farm League for us. What happened on your visit there?
This is not a story worth telling. I may have broken their washroom. I don't know. I flushed the urinal and the urinal would not stop flowing, and I jiggled the handle and it wasn't happening, and then I just fucking walked out. So if I flooded your bathroom, Farm League, I'm sorry. Hopefully we'll give you a nice beer review here, but that's...
Some poor guy had to mop all of your piss off the floor because he couldn't get that fixed, huh?
I actually checked their social media a couple of days after that to see if it was closed because of flooding. There was no such thing, so I'm hoping it all sorted itself out.
Someone figured it out. Good job.
What do you do? I was walking over there, is that thing still running? And it was, and I was like, I don't know.
You could have told somebody.
I guess I could have told somebody.
Yeah, or turned off the water behind it. There's usually a water that connects to those things.
My first instinct was just run. I just, it was fight or flight, and I flew.
You were flight all the way, huh? Yeah, just out of there.
But yeah, this one, a Hefeweizen, not usually my style. What can I kind of expect here?
Well, I think you will like it. I know you're saying it's not really your style. It's still more of a lager, still kind of bright, I'm expecting. It's going to be kind of carbonated and bubbly. Should be easy to drink. The only thing that might slow us down is depending on how carbonated it might be hitting you in the nose as you're drinking. They were really close to a bottle shop we really like to visit called Old Galt Bottle Shop, which unfortunately is gone now. They were partnering up a lot too when this brewery started.
Yeah, they had a couple collabs. That was one of the places. I think we went to Old Galt before we even had started the podcast. We went there, was like looking for beer options. Really cool bottle shop. Sadly, no longer there, which is unfortunately happening like more and more often with breweries and stuff. And hopefully that trend does not continue, or we won't have as many fine things to sample. Why don't we crack this beer? We'll see how it is, and we'll get into the fucking insanity that is Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Yeah, oh, exactly. Yeah.
Let's crack this thing. After the 20th Century Fox fanfare, we faded on a fabulous California mansion and a disclaimer that the film we are about to see is not a sequel to Valley of the Dolls, like we just said. It does, however, deal with the oft-times nightmare world of show business, but is wholly original and bears no relationship to real persons living or dead. That feels like a necessary legal disclaimer to me. Like, I wonder how many parts of this are loosely cribbed stories of the Hollywood elite.
Probably a significant number of them, right? And I'm wondering if Russ Meyer's, being kind of Hollywood adjacent, would hold some animosity towards that like regular community.
But they're opening the door for him, though. This is a major studio film. You don't bite the hand that feeds you.
That's true. Yeah. Why would you go after 20th Century Fox? But I'm sure they have like a whole bunch of other people or studios that maybe they think these stories look bad on, so they're happy to publish and share.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it could be a different thing. Possible. Either way, this idyllic landscape is suddenly shattered by a woman running out of the mansion while intense music fires up. We see why she's running almost immediately, as what appears to be a Nazi soldier randomly runs out after her, but he might also be being chased, as then a man dressed in what looks like a medieval princess costume pursues him with a sword. The woman hides while the sounds of a struggle ring out, and we cut back to see the medieval prince stab the Nazi with a broadsword before sneaking inside and putting a gun in the mouth of a sleeping topless lady, just as the words "screenplay by Roger Ebert" roll onto the screen. And at this point, my thought is, what in the actual fuck is going on here? I'm so confused.
It's really weird. And like you said, it's Ebert popping up here, and I was a little surprised. I had read it on the box before getting started, but seeing his name there, I was kind of shocked. I didn't realize, like, was this his one attempt, and after that he went into being a film critic, didn't get a lot more writing work?
Would you be surprised if that were the case after?
Oh God, no, not after this piece of shit, no.
Yeah, man. We do, though, get a pretty nice piece of editing here as the woman who wakes up with a gun in her mouth screams, and we immediately cut to a similarly aged lady belting out a song on stage. That is our main character, Kelly, the lead singer and guitar player of a three-piece rock group who are absolutely killing the Westmont Senior Prom. And when the show is over, their manager, Harris, collects a cool $300 from the suitably unimpressed old chaperones. And yet, when the group heads outside of their tour bus/van, they seem oddly unfulfilled.
Yeah, this whole thing is very jarring, right? Moving from that like dramatic scene with the gunshot into quite a good like edited cut here. This performance is pretty good. I'm actually entertained by the music going on, but being at a prom, like you said, is not enough for this band. They need a little more than that. And we're going to find that out because they decide to smoke a little joint in the van, and then the manager, Harris, and Kelly start to make out a little, and he asks her if she wants to f***, and she says, "In LA, baby, in LA."
Yeah, man, he's macking on her hard for sure. And the exact quote is,
"Well, if you want to make love, then let's make love."
Here?
No, in LA.
And that immediately launches us into what I can only describe as like a future montage. It's a list of LA stuff, places, things, and types of people you could find there, only it's stuff that they actually will find there. I found this to be like a really strange sequence, and at first I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but then halfway through we got a flurry of nudity that just keeps coming, so overall I'd give this scene a B.
It's really, really interesting. You know how much I love montages, and this is definitely I could describe as a montage. We don't know at this point that this is actually shots from the movie, but when we get there, I'm really creeped out that we've seen all of this before. They show so much at the start of this film that would give away a lot if you realized it was what was going to be coming up. I found that whole thing really strange. In terms of the random nudity, I was pretty excited to find out that we would get to see the full scenes of all those shots that we had in the montage. That wasn't terrible,
Yeah.
but the whole thing is weird. Yeah.
Oh, for sure, man. But like what you just said about the not knowing we're going to see it later, that we'll see how that all plays out. We have no idea what it is right now, right? So in a way, it's like kind of doing a good job of building like mystery or anticipation of like, how does this like play out? What's going to happen here? When am I going to see this person or this or whatever? Or like, as you were saying, like, can't wait for this nudity. Like that's your take on it, I guess. But like that is kind of, it's an intriguing way of doing this that I have not seen before.
It was an interesting way to sort of foreshadow. I felt like in some ways it gave away too much, but you're right. They did leave enough out, edit it well enough that you still had to wait to see if this was going to come true, if it was going to change. Maybe alternate possible future. I don't know. But it's interesting. We then get almost like an Indiana Jones moment here, but we get the map transition.
Yeah, man. It's a song-length sequence of them driving their van to California with your classic map overlay. And once they arrive, Harris confirms the plan. They're going to find Kelly's rich aunt, Susan Lake, and that does not take long, because right away we cut to some sort of set where a sexy photo shoot is taking place, and Susan is the one directing traffic. She's making business deals, suggestions about sets and costumes, and even trying to calm the diva-ish photographer, who is seemingly upset that one of the female models doesn't look enough like a boy. This guy was kind of a lot, I found.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a bunch of characters in this that are extremely over the top. This scene really set like kind of the date for this movie. The whole thing felt out of place for me with the reality in which I know. It kind of made me think of Austin Powers.
Oh my god, dude! Austin Powers pulls a ton from this. There's quotes later, like exact quotes. They're just from this movie.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like Austin Powers was incredibly inspired by this thing, or definitely other Russ Meyer's films, probably too.
Well, it's 1970. You said this was made, right? It's like early 70s, kind of like late 60s. It is that period where it's unmistakably this era. Susan, when Kelly shows up, is thrilled to reconnect with her niece, and when the topic of her large family inheritance comes up over tea, Susan basically offers a third of the money to Kelly right there on the spot. But you know who does not like that? Susan's financial advisor / lawyer, Porter Hall, who can barely wait till Kelly's out of earshot to dismiss her as a money-grubbing hippie and admonish Susan for even considering giving her the cash. Now, this guy's clearly a douchebag who's after the money himself, but in his defense, Kelly does not hesitate for a second when it's offered to her. She also jumps at the chance to get her band in a private party with legendary record producer Ronnie Z-Man Barzell, and has maybe the worst case of crazy eyes I've ever seen in my life. So definitely a couple strikes against her there.
Oh my goodness. There's a lot happening quickly in this thing, and I'm kind of having trouble following. I've nailed who Kelly and Harris are. I understand that this is the aunt, but other than that, I'm struggling a little bit. I do know now that she was trying to get an opportunity to play for someone, like an intense record producer, and that becomes clear pretty quickly. But I was at this point having some trouble keeping up with what was going on. I don't know if that is more about me or more about the production of this thing.
I think it's the production. We do get a lot of like quick cuts here, especially at the beginning. It's weird because at different points, I feel like it really drags and it's going slowly, but at first it's just hitting us quick with stuff. You got to kind of keep up. And again, we have very little information in a lot of sense. So like it is kind of hard to track. From this scene though, we head to the Z-Man's party where we see and hear from several of the people featured in that weird LA montage from earlier. Mm-hmm. And there's no other way to say it. This is an absolute freak show. Like people of all different ages, races, and sexual orientations, each dressed in outlandish outfits, the ones who were dressed anyway, and having the most bizarre, twisted, overtly transgressive conversations you could possibly imagine. Like it's basically a clip show of sex and drug-based innuendo, all set to the music of Strawberry Alarm Clock. I'll say this for the Z-Man, he throws a hell of a party.
Really, really interesting, right? The guy does not hold back. They call it a freak out rather than a freak show, but it is just such a diverse group of people just all kind of going all out on the sex and drugs and rock and roll at this time. It's really frenetic, too, in terms of the cuts and the sound and the shots. And I'm trying to give them credit and feel like that's intentional. Like they want you to feel how disjointed you might be if you were at that party. And I don't know how to describe this. All I would say is it made me feel more disoriented and confused than when we had like just arrived in California. And that was already a lot.
I'm sure it's meant to be disorienting. That's a good call by you. But we get oriented a little bit here by the Z-Man, who spots Kelly, Aunt Susan, and Porter walking in and hurries over to introduce himself.
It's okay, I'll say it. Haven't I seen you somewhere before?
You saw her at my studio this afternoon, Ronnie. This is my niece, Kelly McNamara.
Every inch as ugly as you are, Susan. Must run in the family.
This dude is a smooth talker, and we get treated to more of his witticisms right away as he walks Kelly through the party, pointing out the characters who are going to play a big part in the story we're about to see. There is Ashley St. Ives, a very prominent actress in the adult film scene, handsome non-adult film actor Lance Rock, or at least we think he's an actor, and ambitious young law student Emerson Thorne, and the combination of people, drugs, and music flowing through here causes Ronnie to utter a phrase that would famously be co-opted by Austin Powers nearly 3 decades later.
This is my happening and it freaks me out.
Oh, it's a stone gas man.
How much do you love the Z-Man?
I actually really like the character.
Is it the medieval bent? Like the medieval thing? He's got that kind of like King Arthur.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely the Shakespearean King Arthur and theatrical nature of how he lives his life that had me enjoying. He puts everyone on edge, but I really did enjoy the character. And I thought the guy who acted it did a really good job.
Yeah, I would say that his is probably the best performance of this movie, but I would also say that's a very low bar, as we'll go through this later. Now, the rest of the band arrives as the Z-Man is finishing giving Kelly the grand tour, and this is where we learn the names of the other 2 members. There's Pet the drummer, and what the trailer called soul sister of the group, and you can interpret that as you will. She's black. I just really want me to interpret it. She's black. That's why they call her a soul sister. And then there's Casey, the bass player, who is actually the daughter of a U.S. senator, a fact which amuses Porter Hall quite a bit when he meets her at the bar. And if it wasn't absolutely clear before now, this is the scene where they really hammer home Porter's disapproving square vibes. You know what I mean? He's not down with the whole hippie thing.
Oh, God, no. He's sort of the uptight businessman, although he also throws off really creepy uncle, too. Like you're getting that right away, right? He's like, this is definitely pervy uncle. He's supposed to be a square, but he's also a giant pervert.
On paper, he does not approve of the whole free love thing, but if it was offered to him...
Well, if it was the right young woman.
Yeah, but it seems like from the various conversations he has, there is no wrong young woman. I don't know. Everyone he talks to, he's...
Oh, no, that's what I mean, though, right? Like, this guy is an old man perv. He's not looking to bang other ladies his age. This guy's only got eyes for the young women.
That's true. He's not gravitating towards that one fucking old lady you mentioned earlier with the weird hair and face and husband.
No, it's shocking that he didn't go there. I mean, she had no teeth.
Yeah,
so
I didn't really...
that's some appeal.
I didn't really sell it, I guess, when I was saying that. Casey, it turns out, is not the only one having an intense meeting at this party. The second that porn star Ashley St. Ives lays her eyes on Harris, she has got her mouth wide open. Metaphorically, that is.
Come into my den, said the spider, etc.
I love that quote. I don't know why. That's about...
Was it the etc.?
Yes. That's about where the subtlety ends with her, though,
God.
as she puts the full court press on him right away. But it turns out old Harris is a bit of a square, too, because he inexplicably does his best to reject her numerous advances. What is this guy thinking?
Yeah, he still thinks he has a shot with Kelly. He thinks he's going to be able to manage and make love to the lead singer / guitarist, but we know that's not going to work out in reality.
Yeah, that is true for sure. But sparks are just flying all over this party as we get a meet cute between Pet and Emerson Thorne, but things aren't going nearly as well in the other room when Harris finally finds Kelly. She's having a real close conversation with the Z-Man, and when Kelly introduces him, Harris gives him an appropriately chilly reception. Luckily for everyone, the Z-Man seamlessly diffuses the situation by dialing the pretentiousness way down, right, Noel?
Just the perfect amount of pretentiousness. It did seem here like Z-Man was trying to see if he could pick up Kelly, and understandably Harris is not okay with this. Kelly also did not dissuade Z-Man in any way. She wasn't being like, well, maybe something's happening between me and Harris here. I did tell him I'd f*** him if he drove me to LA, and I don't think I've fulfilled that promise yet.
No, man, she says he's her man and then extends it to manager. You know what I mean? Like she does that. She kind of
leaves it open, which was dirty. So I don't think Harris was very well acted, but the guy definitely knew how to respond to getting cut down because he had the right sad look here.
Well, he's sad, but at the same time, he kind of tries to bow up a little bit, and we get just a classic measuring contest between the two of them. Harris is like, let's get out of here, and the Z-Man's not having it. And that's the problem, is that in this measuring contest, unfortunately for Harris, the Z-Man is packing an absolute hog. Not only does he stop the party to have the Kelly Affair perform, he shits all over the band name and rechristens them the Carey Nations. These girls are going straight to the top, but as we see from a hilarious overlay of the Z-Man and Harris angrily eyeing each other while the girls are rehearsing in studio, it doesn't look like old Harris is going to be coming along for the ride.
I think it's a live performance / music video. This feels very much to me like that, and you're right, we get a lot of the overlaid heads of the performers and also Z-Man and Harris staring at each other. Harris is not doing very well here, though. Kelly is smitten with her new band and with Z-Man for providing this for her.
Oh, definitely. Things are going great for the artist formerly known as the Kelly Affair. They not only record this song, but they also completely crush a showcase set up by the Z-Man. Although between Harris's emo moping and Casey's frosty reception to the Z-Man's compliments, there appear to be some cracks starting to form in the foundation. And what's going to fill those cracks? A whole lot of f***ing.
Well, that's usually what fills a crack is a.
Oh, goddamn. There's no need to be crass. Come on.
What I'm shocked at is, we are a couple performances in a recording and a live performance, and already things are falling apart for them. I was shocked that they weren't able to hold this together any longer. I mean, I know it can be challenging, getting some fame and starting to have that go on for you, but they fall apart before it even begins here.
Oh, you're not wrong. But I think, to be fair, the whole free love environment, everyone take all the drugs, whatever, doesn't necessarily set you up for stability and success, and cohesion.
Are you just describing the life of most touring rock bands? This is many of them last for years before they all end up in rehab and broken up for a while.
See, but I don't think it's many. I think some do, and you immediately think of all the ones who are successful. There's probably a whole bunch of fucking burnouts that are just in a gutter somewhere.
The ones who are successful are just able to carry on a little longer.
But you got to avoid guys like fucking Lance Rock, that handsome actor from earlier. He spots Kelly alone and swoops in to chat her up, even ditching his very busty companion to accompany her to the Z-Man's next party. Casey has already bailed on it and is pursued at the door by some lady named Roxanne, who I think was at that photo shoot earlier. And that leaves Harris, who's feeling just bad enough about himself to have the best sex of his life with Ashley St. Ives. And how about this product placement? There's nothing like a Rolls, Noel.
That just kept going on and on. What a weird sex montage. There is quite a bit of that in this movie, clipped scenes together as the sex scene.
Well, I mean, they're not just going to show... It's not going to be an uninterrupted chronological sex scene.
NC-17.
No, man, it's NC-17. Well, it's 1970. What does that mean? Someone said, damn, and they were like, it's rated R. Come on.
I guess so. It was not what I pictured. I don't know if I've seen any other NC-17 films, but I was expecting more.
Well, listen, if you were thinking about feeling bad for Kelly here, don't. As our next scene takes place in her bedroom after she's done getting nailed by Lance Rock. Turns out old Lance has done his research and he knows all about Kelly and her aunt's money, and he also knows something else, that Porter's trying to stop her from getting it by running her down to anyone who will listen. But can we really trust Lance on this one? I'd like to hear from Porter himself.
That girl, Kelly McNamara, is a tramp.
Okay, I guess Lance might be on something here. I don't know.
It's shocking that they and then immediately after he goes on a 4-minute diatribe talking about her past and history and money and stuff.
That should have set off so many alarm bells for her. Just the fact that he knows so much about her and she's just kind of oh, you've done she's playing it coy, but you can't be like that when you're going to inherit all this money. You get out of there.
Yeah, it was not subtle at all. None of the acting is tremendously subtle in this film, and he's not pulling off here.
No kidding. Now, I'll give Porter some credit. He is at least willing to say all of the stuff he feels about Kelly and a bunch of other hurtful things to her face. But this pretty much has the opposite effect of what he intended, as she decides to dig in and demand half. This is a serious emotional scene, as opposed to the next one we get, where Pet and Emerson Thorne take a study break to bang after running through a field in slow motion like no two humans have ever run ever. What the fuck was that?
I actually paused and rewound the next scene where they were running through the field because it was so fucking hilarious. Of course, they find a farm with a haystack, and you're like, oh, here we go. We know what's going to happen here. It's going to be a bang in the haystack. They finish off at this haystack, and then we head back to Kelly banging again, too. It seems like you had suggested earlier they're all just going to start fucking their problems away, and it's really happening here.
That's what it is, but she ends up getting a phone call that ruins her morning reverie with Lance Rock. It's Porter who, despite his strong comments a moment ago, is whistling a different tune the next morning. In fact, when he calls her up, it's to apologize and ask her to meet him for a drink. Now, at first, it seems like he might be reconsidering his attitude towards her, especially once she starts dancing to the jukebox and he takes a long look at her boobs. But he shows his true colors in a second as he offers her the paltry sum of $50,000 to walk away. This enrages her so much that she manhandles Porter right there in the bar. And just to make sure he's out of her way, Kelly takes him back to her place where she smokes him up and then honeypots him, luring him into bed, which, although he ends up not being able to perform, is going to give her the leverage she needs to sink him with her Aunt Susan. Or maybe she just wanted a fucking old man. We'll find out later. I don't know.
It does appear in here that she, after smoking him up, tries to give him a hand job, but it's flopping around like a fish smacking around on a dock over there. We go from her trying to give a hand job to this creepy old uncle into another party.
Yeah, but this Z-Man party is a lot more tame than the first one, or at least it seems that way to me. And maybe that's because pretty much everyone is in a state of disarray. Kelly's still getting worked by any and everyone for her aunt's money. Casey is nowhere to be found. Pet is alone because Emerson's trying to pass the bar exam. Harris is sinking deeply into depression, drugs, and alcohol. And Kelly's Aunt Susan is rattled when a former lover shows up, presumably at the Z-Man's behest. These are truly dark times. Although it seems like half the characters haven't realized it yet. Harris sure has, though, after Ashley St. Ives leaves him lying on the beach with this send-off.
Harris, you're drunk and you're stoned. And the worst of it is, you're a lousy lay. You'll never get into one of my films, sweetheart. Unless maybe as a hairdresser.
What do you mean?
Kinder to tell you now, lover. Maybe it's not too late for you to find some nice, tender boy.
Oof. That is not what you want to hear from the hot lady you're fucking.
Like I said before, that porn star needs a lot more than Harris can offer, and him being drunk and high and not being able to perform didn't help out in this situation either. We quickly transition from the hay into the sand. They are just fucking in all the most uncomfortable places.
Free love, man. They don't discriminate. It's any and everywhere. She's a hell of a lady. That's all I know. Harris does not respond well to this as he marches back into the party and basically forces himself on Kelly before getting into a brawl with Lance Rock. And how does that work out for him? Not well. Lance beats the ever-loving shit out of him, which does drive Kelly away, but not into the arms of Harris. Instead, she leaves the party solo after first sinking Porter Hall by slapping him in the face with his $50,000 offer, which Aunt Susan then reads. So he's fired, and I guess it turns out Kelly really did just want to nail an old guy earlier.
I'm kind of getting bored in the movie here. Like, this is the point in the movie where it's starting to drag for me. It started out really fast and hard and, like, kind of intriguing, and now I don't really care about anybody.
Well, things keep spiraling here as Lance Rock throws a punch the Z-Man's way when he implies that Lance's interest in Kelly is purely financial, and Harris slinks off to Casey's place where he ends up hooking up with her in a pill-fueled moment of quiet desperation for both of them. But it's Pet who really fucks up in this sequence. She lets herself get seduced by a heavyweight champion's live for today philosophy and boxing metaphors, only for Emerson to come home early from studying to find them in bed together. This all culminates with that same heavyweight champion, who I think was contractually obligated not to wear a shirt in this movie, running Emerson down with his car and tossing his limp body into a flower bed. Not great.
This whole series is absolutely fucked, right? Like, we get to the next
morning.
morning.
That about every series.
That's true.
Every series this movie is like this.
But this scene of Emerson coming in and then the champ and the other girl getting angry at Emerson because he came home while they're fucking, right? Like they were both so furious at him for showing up rather than him like
you were supposed to be studying.
Yeah. It was insane. And then he runs outside and the champ tries to run him over and then drives around in a circle until he finally does hit him and like throw him into the bushes. And this is the moment that she knows that they're in love. Like this is the moment that she's like, you were the one for me, Emerson. Like it's such a fucked up scene.
But it was some big romantic drama is what you're saying?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it was so bad. I was so upset.
Oh, I agree, man.
Yeah, so we transition from that, though, to another bad scene with Casey waking up and finding Harris beside her.
Oh, and she's not happy about that either.
No, she's been taking basically pass-out drugs, like date rape drugs, and feels like she's been raped here. Screams him out of the place, rightfully so.
She says he's just like all the others, meaning men, and that's going to affect her story a little bit later. Yeah, man, I said a minute ago that the band's fall from grace culminated with that whole shirtless hit and run thing, but it really comes to a head in our next couple of scenes. There's a performance of their appropriately titled new song, Look On Up at the Bottom, complete with another round of Z-Man Harris overlays, followed by Harris despondently looking at the Carrie Nation's album cover in a store window before turning around, walking first into a newspaper vending box, and then throwing said box through the aforementioned window. Now, I would say that Harris has hit rock bottom here, but that's going to happen in about 30 seconds. Literally.
Holy fuck. Like, he's having a terrible moment here. It's reminding me of our Neil Diamond movie.
The jazz singer?
Yeah, this reminds me of the jazz singer. Yeah, when he's looking sadly out. Oh man, and he's smashing shit. It does seem like he's hit rock bottom until we see him 40 feet above the ground on a set here.
Oh fuck, man. He is just totally unable to handle being excommunicated from the Carrie Nation's success. So while they're performing on a late night talk show, he sneaks into the studio and watches from a catwalk like the goddamn Phantom of the Opera. Or I guess Phantom of the Paradise would be more appropriate in this case, right? Same kind of vibes. And he jumps off, splattering down on the stage below, but somehow surviving, albeit with a severe spinal trauma that has left him paralyzed from the waist down. But it's important to remember, Noel, things could always be worse. He could be paralyzed and have gotten someone pregnant.
The turn for the dramatic here is so over the top. We are in like ridiculous freak out sexuality and then drama. And now we're getting like our, I don't know, sort of like it feels soap opera-esque in the amount of transitions that are happening in mood in this movie. It's out of control. I don't understand how he's not dead. The effect of him hitting the stage and then like some bad makeup after makes him look really, really fucked up.
Oh my God, man. He flops down on that stage like fucking Porter Hall's limp flopping on that dock you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It's pretty rough.
He says he looks dead as shit. I don't understand it, man.
Oh yeah.
But
he lives. He lives.
And
like you said, he's a paraplegic who has impregnated Casey after raping her.
He didn't actually rape her. Hang on a second. He asks her if he can sleep with her, and she says yes. And then the next morning, though, she didn't remember. She was pilled up. He didn't remember either. It's bad times. But speaking of, after talking it over with her future lesbian lover, Roxanne, Casey makes plans to terminate the pregnancy, although this decision takes a great emotional toll on her, as it no doubt would, and she ends up freaking out and bailing. And speaking of emotional tolls, Kelly completely blames herself for Harris's stage dive and is going to have to work off the guilt. Pet seems to be the only one who's managed to find solid ground again, as Emerson has forgiven her and even asked her to marry him. In fact, he ordered a dozen roses to celebrate their first week of being engaged. But unfortunately, when the doorbell rings, there's something else getting delivered. 230 pounds of rock-solid heavyweight adversity. And this time he's wearing a shirt.
It comes off, though, at some point here, right? Like, I feel like he leaves this house and that shirt's off.
I don't know if it does. He wasn't wearing it when he was fucking driving earlier, so I have no idea.
Oh, my God. It's insane. The champ is back. He's mad because he had to spend some time in jail for hitting the other guy with the car and dumping him.
Imagine spending time in jail for that. It's crazy.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so he's here, and he's basically trying to force himself on the female character here, and the future lawyer's trying to fight back and getting pummeled by the champ. Things are not going well. How does this end, though?
Well, it ends with Pat pulling a fucking knife on him and the champ throwing in one more boxing metaphor for good measure before he leaves.
I'm throwing in the towel.
Yeah, that's probably a good move if you don't want to get stabbed. But I'll tell you who isn't throwing in the towel on love. Everybody else. Kelly is nursing Harris back to health and rediscovering what she loved about him in the first place. Casey is exploring her feminine side by exploring Roxanne's feminine side. And Aunt Susan is not only reconnected with her old lover, but they're getting married too. Even the Z-Man is getting ready to shoot his shot, although we don't know it yet, when he invites Lance Rock over to one of his special private parties. And this is the scene where I figured out that Lance isn't just money hungry. He's literally a gigolo. When he takes the Z-Man's call, he's in bed with some old bag. Did you know that was what was going on here?
He had early in the movie suggested that he was hooking up with old ladies trying to make money. But you're right. I didn't realize he was really being paid for his time with these ladies. And that's what it seems like. It also seems like he's willing to go to Z-Man's party because Z-Man's offering him some money or some fame here too.
Or some drugs. Something.
Yeah.
The Z-Man's got everything that you'd want, right? Turns out, though, that special private party the Z-Man's throwing, it's a costume party, and we see a couple of familiar outfits pretty much right away. There's a Nazi uniform on Z-Man's bartender/butler, and what I earlier described as a medieval prince costume, but what is actually a Superwoman costume, or so says the Z-Man himself. So we know where this is going now to some extent, but we don't know exactly how it's going to get there, and I can confirm that there are plenty of surprises along the way. But hey, I guess this is what happens when you drink wine laced with peyote, right?
It's fucked up. This costume party, this tiny party Z-Man has planned, is gonna take a turn. Exciting though, Roxanne and Casey do find each other, which is good, right? We've got some love blossoming here. Good for Casey. She's been dealing with some shit.
Yeah, and they're the only other two guests at that private party, which is actually unfortunate for them, as it turns out, as we'll see in a moment. But at the party, everyone drinks, they smoke, and they get super horny. Casey and Roxanne basically go to the taco bar right there in front of the Z-Man, and then again in a private room. And speaking of Z-Man, he makes his move too, sneaking into bed with Lance and trying to jerk him off. Lance isn't having it though, which incurs the Z-Man's wrath. He basically hog-ties Lance and forces him to listen to a lengthy monologue at knife point, or sword point, I guess. But things really take a turn here after Lance tries to talk his way out of this by playing the whole seduction thing off as a game. It's no game to the Z-Man, though, who unbuttons the silky shirt of his costume to reveal the smallest pair of tits in this movie.
Oh my God, no. You've been a broad all along, right, Barcel? Goddamn broad! Goddamn ugly broad, Barcel! An ugly broad!
The Z-Man is a woman. Twist!
Yeah. Really, really strange. Tons of stuff happening here, right? We have both a lesbian and kind of a homosexual scene here with the men. Ronnie does get turned down and then shows himself to be a woman. Is he a woman or is he transgender?
I don't know. It's hard to say. He doesn't really reveal. He reveals his boobs, but that's it.
It made me wonder if this section is where the NC-17 rating came from. Like whether the homosexuality and then the gender sort of stuff that's coming up here is what made the reviewers or people think that this wouldn't be rated R.
I mean, it's possible. There is a ton of nudity in this, though, and also a lot of drug use. And I mean, there's a lot of things you can point to for maybe why, but this would have been for sure. Put it this way. When we watched Can't Stop the Music, which, by the way, came out 10 years later, we were like, oh, I can see why this bombed. It's way too gay for mainstream audiences. I could see this absolutely freaking people out if they managed to get to this point after all the other stuff. Because again, this is a very it's a progressive but also transgressive for the time kind of thing. They're trying to provoke almost with some of this, I feel, and this is a point where you'd be like,
they definitely tried to push here. So we get this big reveal. We get the sort of gender reveal here, and everything goes well after that, right?
I feel like we use this joke a lot where we're like, and it's great, everything's good. No, man, of course not. Faced with being spurned after sharing his deepest secret, the Z-Man takes the sword and cuts Lance's head off to the inexplicable sounds of the 20th Century Fox fanfare that we heard at the very beginning of this movie. I wonder how they felt about that shit. This is so weird.
Revenge here is pretty swift. I had said that I really like this character, connected with it a lot, and it pulls through here. He does what he feels he needs to when he's when he's married. Good use of the sword. One quick swift motion cuts off the head. definitely did not look real, but was entertaining nonetheless.
Sorry, just so I can clarify, you are pro the decapitation here.
Oh man,
fuck Lance
that
Rock.
Lance Rock
Z-Man
character was
doing the right
terrible. He deserved to die. He was just trying to steal money from old women, and then he scorned the love of this other character who clearly showed like.
Hang on,
he was
are
there
you
for
saying
him.
he should have the Z-Man? Is there some like obligation? He's not allowed to reject the Z-Man?
I'm
Stop
not
it.
saying he's obligated. I'm saying he's an idiot for not understanding what the Z-Man was offering.
What is the Z-Man offering?
Well,
we don't know what he's hiding under the rest of that costume.
We didn't get to find out.
Lance didn't want to find out. It doesn't mean he deserves to die.
I don't know. Lance was a bit of a
This is a
bad.
scorching hot take
I
from
didn't
you.
feel bad about Lance. I didn't feel
how
bad
dare
about
he
Lance.
not or get by the Z-Man?
Just putting it out in the world.
This is the end result of your progressiveness is everyone must not reject the advances of
that
a
is not
whatever
how
the fuck.
I feel. But
That's how it sounds.
Everyone has choice to
All
reject.
right.
I just felt that Lance was an asshole, and Z-Man had treated him like a prince.
All right.
Oh man. So
I don't know, man. Unfortunately,
who witnesses this headless man?
well, that's the problem. Casey happens to witness this, which sends her running out of the Z-Man's mansion, thus launching us into the sequence we saw earlier. The Nazi butler is right behind her and the Z-Man right behind him, and we see the same sword murder as before, albeit in a much more lengthy and graphic fashion. We get a lot of stabs here and a great deal of blood.
Yeah, for being so swift at chopping off the head of our character earlier, it takes like 50 plunges of the sword into our like German bartender to end this guy. So the Z-Man dressed as Wonder Woman with weird
Superwoman.
How
dare you?
Dressed as Superwoman with like strange makeup breasts out and a broadsword is stabbed a German man to death on the beach and is now going to go back up to the house to see who's left.
Yes. As you may recall, Z-Man grabs the gun next and puts it into what we now know is Roxanne's mouth. This time he pulls the trigger and we get a cool but disturbing effect where the blood from her head shoots up through her nose. Luckily, Casey didn't witness that as she's busy frantically calling for help. The only problem is, instead of calling the police, she calls Kelly and tells her to call the police. This is just a really sloppy way to get the other main characters to the mansion for our final scene. But the bigger problem for Casey is that this movie is taking place in the time of landlines, and wouldn't you know it, the Z-Man is listening in on the other line. The call was coming from inside the house.
You're right. This is definitely sloppy. This is sloppy writing too, right? They, like you said, just need an excuse to get everyone here. So, of course, Kelly and the crew are going to be heading over to try to save Casey. But Z-Man is smart. He was listening on that other line. And who's going to get to Casey first?
Well, unfortunately, it is the Z-Man. Kelly, Harris, Pet, and Emerson race over to the house while he stalks Casey, but they will not make it in time. Z-Man finds her and shoots her face off. Like, literally, it's bad.
Oh, shot to the forehead, and then we get a terrible makeup effect.
It's not a great makeup effect for sure. But anyway, this happens before Emerson, Kelly, and Pet rush in and tackle him. Now, I want to be very, very clear here. I am in no way, shape, or form making fun of people with disabilities when I say this. Would they have made it on time if they hadn't had to carry Harris's wheelchair out of the house?
Oh, when you said that,
that's a long pause.
Yeah. Well, anytime you lead with not to offend, but, which is basically what you just did there, you're putting yourself in line of offensiveness.
I think Casey will still be alive.
Yeah, clearly because they had to slow it down for paraplegic Harris. They didn't get there in time. Even getting him out of the car and then having some, like, they added comedy to the aspect of getting him out and, like, crashing.
Oh my God, I was going to ask you about this too. This is my next thing. So my first thing was, would they have made it on time? My second thing is, he's still in the car. They're in there wrestling with Z-Man. Harris is, like, struggling to get out of the car, struggling to get his wheelchair out of the car, and then struggling to get himself into the wheelchair. And all I could think of here was, is this sequence supposed to be funny? It comes off like parody almost, right? He's trying to do this. It's so dramatic. It's so dramatic that it's like beyond actual drama. And for me, drifted into parody. And I'm so glad that you felt the same way, because I'm like, am I a horrible person for thinking that this is like...
I love that you were just worried that you were a bad person. You weren't even really thinking about how poorly constructed the scene was. You were
it's
just
terribly
like,
constructed, but that's I was just like, is it on purpose or not? I was wondering if I was interpreting it correctly.
Well, It felt like it was a bunch of pratfalls and it was humor. It was a challenging end to this thing, especially after how graphic the 3 murders were just leading up to it.
Yeah, honestly, that wheelchair thing, him trying to get out of the car in the wheelchair, that would not have been out of place in like a Naked Gun style 80s comedy spoof, right? Like that
Absolutely.
was so melodramatic to the point where I was like kind of trying not to laugh.
It was over the top, and I was on the verge of laughter too, but it didn't come out until what happens at the culmination of this fucking scene.
Man. Well, Harris does finally get in that chair and helps everyone take the Z-Man down when they stumble outside and kind of like crash into him. And if you thought that Harris trying to get into the wheelchair was dramatic, wait until you see what happens after the gun goes off and Z-Man dies. Pet gets a look inside the house, sees Casey in a headless body, and all of a sudden, the acting just gets dialed up to 11. Her, and especially Kelly, go so far over the top with the facial expressions and voice work that I almost couldn't handle it.
Casey, she's dead. He killed her. And there's someone else inside, but I don't know who it is. The head is missing. Oh, God.
So, acting terrible.
Yes, Kelly's
Terrible.
atrocious.
And
I don't know how I didn't realize it until now. She's really, really bad.
yeah, the only thing she's good at is singing. She's actually a decent singer, but her performances are terrible. This is all like I'm in a state of shock and awe over like how this whole thing has played out. It's got me completely baffled, and I'm about to break, and then they fucking break me. He dies.
I know it broke
and
you.
immediately, and we even get clarification. What the fuck happens?
They say
What the fuck happened?
they say things get darkest just before the dawn. And after all of these dark turns, you will be stunned to find out that we're getting a happy ending as Harris suddenly realizes that he can move his toes.
What the fuck?
His paralysis is gone. And this miraculous recovery is accompanied by a deeply philosophical voiceover that tells us the following. The act of death has caused another life to be reborn, Noel. There can be no beginning or ending that does not in some way touch another, for our actions affect the lives and destinies of the many. And this mysterious yet authoritative voice goes on to point out all of the mistakes made by the various characters we've met on this journey before wrapping things up by telling us that we must each decide what our life will be. But if love is in us, then gentle will be all our steps as we walk beyond this valley. And all I could think of here was, they were so fucking close to saying the title of this movie. What a tease. This is where they broke me. They broke me by getting that close.
I'm pretty sure I woke my entire family up. I was watching this
Just
late
shouting?
at night, and I was fucking shouting at the television, just losing my mind that he immediately walked again, and then a narrator told me it was a fucking connection in miracle.
All things are one.
I can't believe this is the fucking end to this movie. I don't know if it's the time we grew up or what it was, but I didn't need this closure. I did not need someone to talk me through the faults of each one of these fucking characters. And I did not think Harris should fucking walk again because the Z-Man died at the end of this bullshit. It was too much.
Well, hang on a second, though, because the movie's not actually over yet. This is not the ending. It probably should be. In fact, I feel like it absolutely should be. But we get an epilogue that shows us the world's first ever triple wedding ceremony. Kelly's marrying Harris, Pet's marrying Emerson, and Aunt Susan is marrying her ex-boyfriend. All while, for some reason, fucking Porter Hall is like watching forlornly through the window of the courthouse. Just go out with the gentle will be our steps if love is in us thing. A dude just got his head chopped off. This is no time for fucking comedy.
Yeah, it's all
correct.
It's all a lot. It's all really weird. I don't know why they're triple marrying. Why are we happy again after this horrible thing? Like, they're not getting over what happened to their friends in that house, or hopefully they're not this quickly. It's just too much.
Ebert fucked it with this epilogue. I'm telling you.
He fucked this
it.
whole
It was
thing.
already fucked,
This
but he
whole thing
fucked it
is
more.
fucked. Yeah. As someone who is so critical of everyone else's films, he needs to look in a mirror for this one. I would love to read a super negative review by himself of this movie. I think it would be tremendous to see.
Well, I'm pretty sure his future broadcast partner, Gene Siskel, famously gave this 0 stars.
Well, they were trying to set up a bit of like animosity between them when they talked about it. They wanted different viewpoints, and that's a good way to do it. That's why people like listening to us.
Maybe. And on that note, I really think we should probably get to our ratings here and talk about what we did or didn't like about this. The way we always do this, we rate the movie on a scale of 1 to 10 2 times. 1 to 10 for how bad it is, 1 to 10 for how enjoyable. And the goal is to find movies that are a 10 out of 10 on both scales, or what we call the Crit 20. And for me, like, I referred a second ago to how this is no time for comedy. I had this thought watching the movie, is this a comedy? Is this whole movie supposed to be a comedy? Is it like a farce? Is it like a satire of something? Is it, I don't know.
It's clearly not a comedy. The end of this movie is serious as fuck.
I mean, it should be, but then we get that wedding ceremony.
If this whole thing is a comedy, it is the most dry comedy ever. Like, it is to the extent that most people would not understand or see that.
But there are jokes. There are moments that are supposed to be funny. They don't land, and neither do the dramatic parts for the most part. But like they're trying to make jokes. I don't know. Nothing lands in this, and I blame this on 2 things. Number 1, the overacting. That Kelly lady, god damn, she is awful. Every reaction seems like a person who has like no emotions of their own trying to show emotions. It's fucking jarring every time she's on screen. And like there are a bunch of other people who are almost as bad as her. The acting in this is fucking terrible. And then there's the dialogue. The Z-Man's whole fucking Shakespearean, Arthurian, whatever the fuck, Victorian English, like soliloquy after soliloquy. I said earlier, it is interesting for them to show us an end sequence at the beginning. It kind of creates a mystery for us wondering how we're going to end up there. But there are also too many weird montages where they're flashing forward or flashing back. Russ Meyer came in way too heavy on the overlays. He goes back to that like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, all right, we get it. You have editing technology. Like, come on. I don't know. They weren't all necessary. They were so fucking melodramatic. I did think, though, that there were some interesting costumes and sets in this, and that this did capture the kind of like bacchanalian vibe that I have to believe existed at the time, especially among the wealthy. So as bad as this was, I'm only going to give it a 9 bad because I did feel like it got some era-specific elements correct. What about you? What did you think?
Bad. It's really fucking bad. Acting was the top of my list too. There was very little to speak about in terms of acting. In fact, only Z-Man kind of carried it. You could say that Porter was an effective, creepy old man square. But there were times where he was getting into arguments and yelling at stuff that was not convincing either. Like, it was pretty bad. I thought the writing was poor, with you, story and dialogue. You asked me at the start if this was enough titillation for me, and I will say that Russ Meyer's does provide tremendously voluptuous ladies to look at and nothing to complain about, like all great choices.
Sorry, is this the bad or enjoyable rating?
This is bad. This is bad.
I guess the trailer did promise us hot ladies. So
despite the like amount of showing of breast, there wasn't dramatically like inspiring sexuality in this movie. The sex scenes were underwhelming to me in an NC-17 like open love kind of thing, and maybe they've gotten better at doing that since then, and so maybe I'm used to some better stuff. But all of that together, I actually felt that this qualified for a 10 bad.
Wow, interesting. But how enjoyable did you find the movie on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I wasn't upset at watching it. It wasn't like I had. It was almost more of like a curiosity to me. It felt like a learning experience. One of those moments where I hadn't been exposed to something like this. I knew of Russ Meyer's. I obviously know who Ebert is and was curious of his writing. I was disappointed in that, both Russ Meyer's sexuality and Ebert's writing. But I did enjoy like a lot of the costumings and setting. I enjoyed some of the music. I thought the Z-Man character and the person who portrayed Z-Man did a really good job. There was also some editing and exchanges that I thought were pretty clever and enjoyed. But I did find it slow. I did find that it didn't give me as much as I was hoping for in the King of the Nudies kind of thing. But altogether, I had this as a 7 enjoyable. So positive still, but it wasn't something that I'm really looking to watch again or excited to share with others.
Interesting. So this is funny because you and I, we had a lot of the same points for how bad this is. We're going to differ on some degree to how enjoyable, but at the same time, our numbers are also very close. So I'll preface this by saying, we kind of alluded to it earlier, I don't like hippies. I'm not a fan of hippie culture. I kind of hate it, to be honest. This is one of my more conservative leanings. I'm not a fan of this. So that's it right away. It's a big strike against me enjoying the movie. I also, like yourself, thought that parts of this dragged. It was a long hour or 45 or whatever it is. The musical performances, you mentioned liking them, thinking she was a good singer. This was not my style of music, which kind of relates to my first point about the hippies, and that made the dragging worse because there are some like kind of lengthy song performance sequences that I did not enjoy. Things I did enjoy, the nudity, I thought was a good amount. I did not have as much lust in my heart as you did, I guess. You were disappointed by that, but I thought for me it was good. The costumes and sets I already said were nice. I liked the mystery elements of like us seeing footage that hadn't happened yet and trying to piece together what's going to happen. That for me, for the most part, worked. I agree. It was kind of overdone. Some of the montage stuff was like too much, but overall, it was an interesting element for me. But again, the acting was so fucking bad that it really bothered me. I have watched this twice now, and I believe I would watch it again. So I'm coming in positive here to that degree, but I only had it as a 6.
Okay, so pretty close.
You putting it as a curiosity is a great way to describe this, and it's really something to see. And again, we'll never know if that's the way that life actually was for anybody at any time, but I would like to believe that maybe it was for some people, but not for me. Not my scene. What about this beer, man? Did you enjoy this beer?
So I think I misrepresented it earlier. I had forgotten how much of a Hefeweizen is wheat-based. It immediately hit me with like banana and pepper-like tones from a wheat beer. So I was like, oh shit, Hefeweizen is not what I was thinking when we were talking about it earlier. And then quickly peeks, and I was wrong. This is an ale, and it's sort of usually European-style, German Hefeweizen, of course. I really enjoyed it. It took me a few moments to get into it. It's kind of like drinking a new really hoppy beer for me too. It takes a couple sips until you like find your palate, and then it was super crushable. By the end of this, I was through it quick, and even opened a second beer to have with it as well. So really enjoyed it.
Yeah, when you were talking about it at the beginning of the episode and you mentioned it being like in kind of like the lager family, I was surprised by that because I always think of Hefeweizen as wheat beers. I didn't say anything because I'm like, this guy knows more about beer than I fucking do, but I wish I had spoken up now because same thing. First sip, I'm like, oh, this is fucking wheaty, like what I expected. But similar to yourself, I will say this, the more I drank of it, the more I started enjoying it. And like, listen, Farm League, when I picked these up, I bought a bunch of other stuff. They make a few beers that I really enjoy. I'm sure you've had a few of their stuff as well. I think it's worth
Oh,
sampling
definitely.
for
If
sure.
they'd let us go back in, I would go for a visit to get a drink.
If I'm not banned because of the fucking
your picture's
thing,
above
there's not
every
a picture
urinal.
of me.
There's one right above it that's like, yeah, don't let this
Surveillance
guy piss, is what it says.
Oh, fuck, man, I hope that's not true. I would like to have some more Farm League beer. So, no, man, I would definitely recommend if you're in the Ontario area. I don't know if they ship or not, but, Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, I don't know if we mentioned at the top, but there's a lot to sample. And I tell you what, speaking of which, our next episode, we're going to have a lot of beer to sample because our next episode is our Christmas episode. And as we do every year, we're going to be doing our annual beer draft. We've got an advent calendar from an Ontario brewer. We're going to be cracking into that. Drafting some beers. Maybe there's a Hefeweizen in there. You never know. We'll see what it is.
Nice. I'm excited. This is always the drunkenest episode of the year as we each consume 6 tall boys in a short period of time.
It's usually an event for sure. So the way we'll do it, we'll draft our beers first, and then we'll put that as a little bonus episode so you can hear what we're going to be drinking. And then, yes, our holiday episode this year. This was actually suggested by a couple of people. We're going to be watching Surviving Christmas starring Ben Affleck.
That's pretty different from Silent Night, Deadly Night, or some of the others we've watched here together.
Also featuring the very talented Catherine O'Hara and James Gandolfini for some reason.
These people all sing comedy to me right now. I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be tremendous.
That's true. The legendary comedy chops of James Gandolfini. Good call.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, man, we'll see what that's like, and we'll be very intoxicated when we do it. So we hope you'll join us in a couple weeks for that, and keep an eye out for that beer draft episode. Before then, if you haven't already, please follow us on social media at the BMB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
Send us emails, thebmbpodcast@gmail.com.
Definitely, and don't be afraid to slide into our DMs with some requests. If you'd like us to cover something before the end of our fabulous 5th season, we can go ahead and do that for you. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. We hope you'll be back in 2 weeks for Surviving Christmas. Until then, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And we'll see you next time on Bad Movies and Beer.
Keep it groovy.
There has never been anything like it.